So we always have lots of questions about the inner child therapy work we do and inner child healing. And really, a very important question that we want to address today is, what is actually the true purpose behind doing inner child work or the inner child healing work, David? Welcome to our Wu Wei Wisdom Life Lessons series. In each episode, we answer your questions, reveal the powerful life lesson, and offer you lots of practical tips and advice to help you live in balance, harmony, and flow.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I think it's always worth kind of just recapping for a couple of moments for those new to the work, what we mean by the term inner child. So, as one of my clients a couple of weeks ago says, does it mean I'm schizophrenic? No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about a part of your mind. Now, this is a part of your mind that during your childhood, and I would guess you are a very sensitive child, if you think about it. Sensitive children, they almost become more aware of their sensitivity, their feelings, before they become in control of their cognitive awareness. So what happens, and there seems to be, for me, an age gap of around 6 years old to 9 years old, just roughly, just to give you a guide. And it's around that type of age gap where the sensitive child sensitivities are fully developed. So they're feeling these things, but they haven't got the cognitive awareness. So something happens. It could be either one thing or a series of things happen in their life. A dysfunctional family, bullying at school, some form of abuse, mentally, physically, emotionally. So these things happen that create a very strong, and I can't emphasize the strength of this feeling. This, like a tsunami, emotional feeling comes over the child. And the child is kind of stuck with this feeling. And some people say, well, why don't they go to their parents and talk about it? But unfortunately, for a lot of my clients, it's the parents that may be involved in creating this feeling. So here's a child, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, experiencing this very strong feeling, and they have to deal with it. They can't just ignore it. It's taking over their life, their thinking, the way they're addressing the world, the universe, going to school. So they have to do something. And this is when they say what I call the vow, V-O-W, the vow. And it can be many forms, but the core of the vow is always the same. It must be me. There's something wrong with me. And when you get that vow planted, it's like a corruption in your belief system. And from then on, and this can carry on through teenage years, through early adulthood, right through your life, because that vow acts like a filter, or one of my clients said, like a sausage machine, and everything goes through that sausage machine. So you don't wake up every morning and say, oh, it must be me. Of course you don't. But that filter's in place. And so when difficult situations arise in your life, it goes through that filter. So this is what we're trying to get at when we use the analogy of the inner child. We're trying to get to that part of your mind that's almost like frozen, that's stuck, and it needs to be released or healed or moved on, because, you know, it's very stubborn. Yeah. It won't let go because it wants to protect itself, and that's why it creates these things that we try and explain, that we call the maze of confusion or the carousel of despair, because it builds up walls of protection, but it doesn't understand that it's actually building a prison, that it's stuck in the prison.
So we all have an inner child.
Yes.
That's a natural part of our mind. That's what we call that part of our mind.
Yes.
And what you're saying is inner child work in adulthood, or inner child healing work, is to address the vow.
Yes.
Is to address the vow which we made as a child because of a particular incident or series of incidences that happened to us. And that vow is basically kept us locked in. We've built up a maze of emotional avoidance strategies around the vow, because the vow is there's something wrong with me. So I guess we don't want other people to know we've made this vow.
It's like a dark secret.
It's like a dark secret. So the inner child work is to find the vow, get down to the vow, and release the vow, and that's what we're healing. And so the inner child is just happy. What becomes a normal, happy inner child? Or?
Well, yes, because what happens is when the child has this vow of it must be me, I'm not good enough, and here's the lies we talk about, isn't it? I'm not good enough, I can't cope, I'm unlovable, or I'm unworthy, or something around those three subjects. Under that is the vow. Under that is there's something wrong with me, because it's kind of come against a situation that we call a life lesson, and it doesn't know how to deal with it. It hasn't got the wherewithal. It hasn't got the knowledge to deal with it. And what we're doing by doing the golden thread is to trace down and to address that part of your mind. It's like going back and educating it. And sometimes I think about it like this. It's like emotional education. You're finding your child, which is very difficult because the child is so good at building up these diversions, avoidances, these, what I call the dual belief system, says one thing, does something else. It's very hard to get a hold of. And that's why the golden thread is so important, because you can get down to the child and you can start to talk to the child and understand what it is. Because for the child, that life lesson of whatever it is, you'll hear this time and time and time again. It's not fair. It's unjust. It shouldn't have happened. That's not why parents should act. That's not why friends should act. I don't think school should act like this. And these are the life lessons. The life lessons is to understand that life is not the way you perceive it to be. Reality is not this wonderful, idyllic Disney world where everybody's happy, everybody works out right, everybody does what you think is correct. That's not life. And you have to learn that lesson. You have to understand about acceptance, about understanding that you can get through these things. This is so important.
I want to say as well, we're going to do a couple of videos on reparenting the inner child and reparenting techniques and things that block people in their mindset in terms of having difficulties with doing this reparenting work. So we're going to do those in separate videos. But for now, I guess the key thing is to understand is, once, as you say, if you use the golden thread process that we teach and that you use with all your clients, to get back to the vow, the point in time when the vow was made, to teach the child, to communicate with the child, to teach the child, explain the life lesson of what really happened, what was the truth of what happened, that whatever it was, whatever episode, whatever happened to you, which could be something very, very terrible or something just as a basic misunderstanding, to explain to the child that it wasn't their fault. That once they learn that life lesson through doing the golden thread process work, doing the reparenting techniques, that then releases the vow. And as you say, the three lies that we talk about, I'm not good enough, I can't cope, I can't manage, or I'm unlovable, they all kind of spring up, they all grow from the core vow. So if we can get to the original incident or incidences, take that life lesson, that then releases the vow, and that is the healing. That's the healing we're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah, so when you get down to the three lies, which most of our clients and everybody can do, you're very close then, but there's another level down and you've got to get to that vow. Because if you do not release the vow, what's actually happening, and this is why Taoist teaching is so important, having that idea that there's something wrong with me, you create a separation. And you've created that separation, and that's what creates what we call the red lights. This is your anxiety. This is your stress. This is your depression. This is all of these things because you've created that separation.
What do you mean by separation,
Well,
David?
this is when the inner child speaks to you through your self-talk and tells you you're not good enough, you can't cope. This is when he starts to criticize you.
Like fighting against you,
Absolutely.
going against your true nature. That's
Absolutely. It's
separate,
like a tug of
yeah,
war.
Okay.
And so you hear these words in your head. Oh, it's because it's you. Oh, it's because you're
like
not.
The voice on your shoulder. And that's the inner child.
That's the inner
grumbling,
child.
complaining, criticizing.
Because the inner child has created that separation. And so the inner child now wants to protect itself. It doesn't want to enter reality because it sees it. And it will use words like, I'm frightened, I'm fearful. The inner child will always, always go and want to say, I feel. When you hear yourself saying, I feel, you know this is the inner child speaking, because the inner child wants to get you onto the feelings because there's no resolution. The inner child can create feelings like dropping off a log. It's very good at creating feelings. And then you go to your feelings. This is what we're always saying. Replace I feel with I think, I choose, I believe. So instead of saying I feel vulnerable, I think I'm vulnerable. I choose to be vulnerable. I believe I'm vulnerable. And that allows you then to ask the golden thread. Why do you think you're vulnerable? Why do you believe you're vulnerable? And that then speaks to the child rather than concentrating on the feelings. You'll see even clients who have been coming to me for several sessions, they still will want to say, well, it's because I'm scared. Immediately they go to their feelings. And once you go to your feelings, you can't resolve this matter. You can't speak to the child and ask the child, I use vulnerable again. Why do you think you're vulnerable? What is it about your situation that is vulnerable? And you see the child will then tell you some of the situations. Well, I believe my parents should have acted in this way. I believe I should have been safe at school. I believe my friends should do that. I believe my friends should do this. So they have this expectation which hasn't been met. Yeah. And this is what causes the separation. So it's almost like, as Alex says, it's like a fight or a tug of war. You know, and this is when you have a dual belief system. One belief for you, and then you say, would you teach that to your child? And
your real child.
Yeah, your physical child. And the people say, of course I wouldn't teach that to my physical child. But you say to yourself, you've created a separation. You're saying, well, it doesn't matter about me, but it does matter about you. You are the most amazing, awesome person. Why don't you love and care for yourself? That part of your mind is crying out to be guided. You know, it's crying out to get brought into your heart and be loved and supported and told it's not stupid. It needs to be told what the truth is. And this is what we call compassionate self-discipline, not lying to it, just being truthful.
And I think that mindfulness of your self-talk, and if it's self-talk based on red light feelings, so those painful, uncomfortable emotions and feelings, what we're saying is a lot of the time it can be the inner child grumbling, complaining, being upset. So that's the time you have to listen and start doing the golden thread process and ask the why question to unpick and find out what the original misunderstanding was that created the vow. A lot of people, David, they talk about as part of the inner child healing process that there needs to be like some forgiveness. People say, do I need to forgive my inner child? Do I need to forgive myself for how I've treated my inner child? Do I need to forgive other people for what they did to me? And I think a lot that expectation that there needs to be some forgiveness involved gets people really blocked with the process of healing. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, I find that. I find the problem with this idea of forgiveness, it creates a hierarchical value, you know, because none of us are perfect and we've all made mistakes and we all will make mistakes because that's how human beings work. I think a much more powerful and stronger word is acceptance. Accept that these things happen to you. I was just working with a client just yesterday, and she told me some horrific childhood experiences that she's been holding on to. She's well in her 40s and 45, I think, and she's holding on to these things that happened 30 years ago, and she will not let them go. And we were talking, and she said, I can't forgive. And I was saying to her, why don't you just accept that these things are part of your journey? And the truth is, it proves to me what I've been saying to you, just how amazing and awesome you are. Because you did get through them. You keep telling me you can't cope when all of the evidence is showing me that that's exactly what you did.
Yeah.
You coped. This is part of your journey. You know, we've all got a journey. Everybody listening to this has got a journey. I'm not saying one's worse and better than the other, but this is your story. This is what's made you into the person you are. Why don't you just accept that and let it go rather than carrying it with you for 10, 20, 30, 40 years on? It's gone. It's in the past. If you won't let it go, if you won't forgive, if you're just like packing up your suitcase and living your life, dragging a suitcase of old memories around with you, you can't change that. Just accept that's part of your journey, good, bad, indifferent, and just move on.
And that doesn't mean, acceptance doesn't mean saying it was okay that it happened.
No,
it was okay that
no.
they did this. It's accepting that it happened.
It's accepting how awesome you are to get through it.
And so that's dealing with acceptance of other people. If your inner child is playing up, being very disruptive, again, you wouldn't seek to forgive your inner child for that, because it's just a child. You need to see your inner child as it just wants attention. So if you're at your end of your tether because you've got all this kind of negative self-talk and your inner child kicking and screaming, and you just want to go, I've had enough. You have to teach that child with compassion, and as I say, we'll do that in another video. But
how can you have enough of yourself?
Yeah.
You can't have enough of yourself. This is your life and this is your journey. Look at yourself, how awesome you are. Look at everything you've gone through. Look how much you've learned. Mm-hmm. This is your journey. How can you have enough of yourself? Why are you so cruel on yourself? Why are you so harsh on yourself? You know what? For a lot of my clients, I don't know about you, but a lot of my clients, they're even worse on themselves than the original dysfunctionality was. They're even worse.
Well, it's carrying on the abuse, isn't it, really?
It you've got to stop it. Mm-hmm. Please, people laugh when I say this. Please, stop it. Stop it now. Mm. Take a breath. Take a breath now. Stop all this nonsense. Drop your shoulders. And I've done a lovely video on the inner child about the meditation. Why don't you listen to that meditation?
I'll put a link to it.
And just for a moment, stop this video and go and listen to that meditation. And think about yourself as that child, that innocent, wanting to please people, wanting to please your parents, wanting external validation. That's not your fault. Mm. That's what you were told. But now you're older. Now it's time to take self-responsibility. Now it's time for you to parent. Now it's time for you to look at the right way for you to be. Now it's time for that compassionate self-discipline. Stop looking externally for people to tell you you're wonderful. You're already wonderful. What's the matter with you? Yeah. Stop it. Because if you keep on looking for that external validation, those strokes, those reassurances, people to tell you that they love you, as you're not worth it, you're going to be searching the rest of your life and you're never going to be successful. Why don't you take that on to yourself? This is self-love. This is all it is. This is you understanding you're not perfect. You're not. But you know what? You're bloody awesome. You are awesome. Why don't you believe in yourself and stop this nonsense and stop it now and think about things every day? Listen to one of our videos, listen to somebody else and just reframe your mind. This is just a bad choices that you've been making. Yeah. Stop saying, I feel. Try that today. Stop saying, I feel. I think, I choose, I believe. Take responsibility for what you think, choose and believe. Go back and help your child. Your child will bring him into your heart or her into your heart. Give her a hug. Tell her she's gorgeous. Tell her you are really there for her. She's not perfect and she can be a bit of a pain, but you still love her and you can hold her close.
Yeah, yeah. And so the end of this process, what a lot of people misunderstand, they think, well, I'm going to be getting rid of my inner child. Because the inner child, what a lot of people refer to as the ego, or we call the human-centered mind. The inner child is part of that human-centered mind, that human part of your energy. And people often think, well, once I've done the inner child work, that means that's the inner child gone. I'll dealt with it. I'll have fully matured myself, and the child part of me will be dealt with, boxed off, put away. But that's not the case. So what is it we're actually aiming for when we, at the end, the kind of end of this process?
Well, that's what I love about Taoism, the philosophy of Taoism, is what you're doing is observing the separation and bringing the separation into a oneness. So you're saying to your child, we're not separate. The warring has got to stop. The fighting has got to stop. This silly inner talk between us, I'm not good enough, I can't cope, I'm unlovable, I'm not worthy, has got to stop. We're a team together, and let us work together. The inner child has got a lot to bring you. One thing it's got to bring you, or what I find with all of my clients, with their inner child, put your hand up if this is you. It's very stubborn. It's very determined.
Yeah.
And you can bring that into your life.
That tenacity and determination is a great quality.
It's a great quality. It's your quality. It's what you've got. Imagine your life now, but you're determined on the right things. You're determined on how awesome you are. Imagine that. Imagine being determined on how awesome you are. It doesn't matter what anybody says to you. You absolutely believe that with an inner strength, like I believe in you. What would your life be like? Ask yourself this question. What would your life be like if you believed in yourself?
Yeah.
Simple as that. And that's what the bringing together of the inner child. Now, this doesn't mean to say that roses grow around the door and bunny rabbits jump in the field and everybody does what you want them to do and everything's fine and we live in utopia and Mickey Mouse walks down the street. This is not Disney World we're talking about. This is reality. There's going to be twists and turns. Things won't work out the way that you wanted. You might be made redundant. I don't know. All these things. But as a team, together, guess what? You can deal with that authentically, truthfully, with a passion. And you connect to your passion when you bring those two together because you are one. You are not perfect, but you are one and you are operating from this awesome quality within you. Never doubt yourself. This is nonsense. What part of you are you doubting? Stop it. This is a time to get back on the bike, pull yourself together, take responsibility, be responsible for your life. Don't hand that over to other people. This is your life. Be responsible for it. And that's the answer to the question of the inner child and you coming together, working as one, helping other people, listening to yourself, answering those questions for yourself.
I think as well as the quality of determination for me, I kind of believe my inner child is kind of the creative side of me, that when I can positively tap into my inner child, that is almost like the creative part of my human energy, that it really invokes it, more playful, more free thinking, less analytical.
And you're right. And it's very important. And I agree with you. The problem is if you hold your inner child in, so the inner child doesn't want to be criticized, doesn't want to be compared, doesn't want to be judged, then the inner child's creativity that you're talking about doesn't come out.
Gets stifled.
Because what's more valuable, more important, is more worried about what other people think about it. Remember, what other people think about you is none of your business. So this is exactly what Alex says. If your inner child is the creative side of you, you will experience this block like it's in a prison again. Because
if you hold the lie that you're not good enough, you can't cope, you're unlovable, and then you're worrying about what other people are going to say, the lie and the vow that is rooted at the bottom of those lies, what you're saying is that blocks the creativity, because the inner child will always make the choice to protect itself because of the lies.
Exactly, because the inner child in the instance that you're talking about is looking for a validation, is looking for somebody to say, oh, isn't that wonderful? Isn't that fantastic? And the inner child is worried in case you do a piece of work, artwork or music or creativity, craft work, writing, anything, and somebody comes along and doesn't like it. Yeah. So the inner child doesn't like that. So you know what it does? It doesn't do it. It blocks down. It puts a protection up. And how many protection? After this video, sit down quiet with a piece of paper and write down how much protection that you've put in. Yeah. It's like building a fort with a moat and then another moat and then a wall and then another wall. But what you're doing is you're creating a prison that you're locked in. And on the example that Alex says, all of that wonderful creativity that's yours, I can't give it to you. I can't take it away from you. You're choosing to keep it locked in, or because you're worried about being criticized, or because you're worried about what other people may or may not say. I don't give a monkeys what other people say. Why don't you be creative? Why don't you trust yourself? Why don't you focus on yourself? And that seems a step too far, but think about it. Play that last little bit. What is stopping you? You.
Write down below.
You are stopping you.
What's stopping you? What is stopping you from tapping into the creativity, the determination, the energy of your inner child right now? Just comment below and let us know.
I tell you, you are stopping you. Stop it.
What we're talking about is, what are the lies? What are the misunderstandings? What are the life lessons? This is the work, getting to the root of those.
And so one of the qualities of the inner child, and what child doesn't want this? Because they're told this as a child. They're looking externally. They're looking outside for that validation. They're looking outside for that reassurance. They're looking outside to tell you that they're loved, that they're worth it. Stop looking outside. Look inside. This is where it goes wrong. This is what we should teach all of our children, that this self-affirmation, that you are enough. You are already enough. You don't have to earn love. You are love. Let me repeat. You do not have to earn love. You are love. You love yourself. And then guess what? If somebody else loves you, that's the cherry on top of the cake. But the cake is already a wonderful, rich cake full of fruit and everything that you need in your life. That's your responsibility to bake that cake. And then hopefully somebody comes and puts a nice cherry on top. But without the cherry, you're still an awesome cake. Believe in yourself. This is what you have to teach your inner child. When you follow the thread, you go back, the inner child you'll see will be scared and frightened. It will push you back. It will be resistance. This is where you've got to hold it close. Listen to that meditation I've done. Hold it close and just say, even if the child squirms, you just say, I love you, baby. I love you. I believe in you. We can do this together. We will do this together. It's just you and I, and we are a team, and we will never let go. I believe in you. I will always believe in you. You are not perfect, but we are together as a team. Hold her close. Don't let her go. Hold her close.
Thank you, David. And I just want to, so everyone's clear, a really important point, because we do get asked this a lot. This idea of separation, pulling apart, and then bringing together in the oneness. So if the inner child is that part of our mind that is kind of pulling apart, trying to resist us.
Protect.
What is the other part?
So the other part.
So what's the kind of joining of the two?
So on several levels, really, I would believe that the part that's trying to do this work, because it's very difficult work, is what we call Shen, the spirit. The essence of you. Some people call it the higher self, but I'm not too keen on that. I would prefer to call it the spiritual side of you. The spiritual side of you that knows what I'm saying is true. Now, the child can scream and shout and have a temper tantrum, and it kind of dampens that self-doubt. And that's what self-doubt is. You start to doubt that you are awesome. You start to doubt that. And what you've got to do is to bring those two together. And we've done a couple of videos on Shen, on what that Shen, that essence of who you are.
We'll talk a little bit more about it as well in the inner child reparenting videos.
Yes.
So if the inner child is the kind of human representative of the human energy of our human mind, or what we call the human-centered mind, the other part is the Shen is representative of the, I guess, the spiritual energy, or whatever word you want to use on it. But the Taoist teaching is that we are both human energy and spiritual energy, and they're the two halves of us. And all we're talking about in terms of the inner child work is bringing the two back together, rather than having them as kind of warring states. So it's that integration, and then once we are together, once we are working with the inner child harmoniously, the Shen acting as the parent to the child is within the inner child reparenting process. How does that feel?
Wonderful. So this is why, a lot of people say, are you telling me to forget my feelings? And I'm not. I'm saying interpret your feelings. So as Alex just said, when you see those two coming together, I'm always a bit worried about the word spiritual, because many people have got different ideas on spiritual. That's why I prefer the word Shen, the essence. There's something about you. If you want to know what this is, think about somebody you love, and you can think about their physicality, but there's something else about them, isn't there? There's an essence, there's a spirit, there's this magic thing that they can't show you. That's what I would call Shen. And when those two come together and you make one, now you create green light feelings, love, bliss, happiness, confidence. You now start to live your passion. You now resist any self-doubt. You accept that you're not perfect, but you're on this journey. You're learning your lessons. You're following your dreams. You're living true to yourself. You're being honest. You're living with integrity. You have a strong sense of purpose. This is what happens when these two come together. This is when I'm saying you are awesome. This is already you. All we've got to do is bring them together rather than being separate. You don't have to learn nothing. Nobody can teach you this. I can't teach it to you. I can't give it to you, because you've already got it. All we've got to do is bring it together as one. And there's been times in your life, even if you've been separate, even if you've been under the spell of the inner child, there's been times in your life that you know when this is happening. There's been pivotal times in your life. Well, I see it a lot as a birth of a child. When you see a child coming, you see this energy come into the room. You see it. You felt it. And what I'm saying is you can live your life with that energy, with that flow, with those green lights. You don't have to live in depression, anxiety, worry, frightened. That's when you're stuck behind your wall. You can be free. You have wings. You have spiritual wings. You can fly. Why don't you fly? Why don't you be who you are? Who knows what you can achieve? I don't know what you can achieve. You don't even know what you can achieve. But at least try. At least try. Let's see. Yeah. Doesn't matter if you don't get there.
And that's so much more possible when you're in Wu Wei, when you're in your Shen energy and the energy of your inner child, your human-centered mind, are in that harmonious balance, working together.
And that's why feelings are so important, because feelings are like an alarm bell. When you get in a red light feeling, anger, distress, guilt, you know you're out of balance.
And there's the pulling apart.
Then the pulling apart, exactly.
The red lights are a sign of the pulling apart of the inner child, the human-centered mind wanting to pull apart from the Shen, because it's stuck on a lie. It's still got the vow.
Do you know those times in your life when you thought, oh, this is going to be really difficult. I'm not going to be able to do this. I don't know, an interview or a task that you're doing. And suddenly you just go through it and it's just like, wow, that was easy. And that's when you're in Wu
Yeah.
Wei. That's when the
Working
Shen
together.
and the human-centered mind are one. And you just do it. Spontaneous would be another a good word. Intuition. You just know what the right thing to do, and you just do it. And that's the feeling we're looking for. And what I'm putting forward to you is you should be living your life in that feeling. People who come to my Qigong class and we can feel the Qi energy flowing through us. This is what we experience, of a sense of well-being, a sense of positivity, of green lights, of positiveness, because you are acting at one. Now, that's not saying that things don't go wrong.
Yeah.
Of course things go
But when
wrong. That's
you're-
reality. But when you're together, you can deal with that.
Yeah.
We're back to the river now, aren't we?
Yeah.
River flowing down. When it hits a big boulder, it doesn't throw its hand up and say, oh my God, that's me scuppered. It finds a way around those difficulties.
And you're much more likely to be able to do that when your energy is balanced and you're working as one together. That's the message.
Yeah.
That's the benefit.
Because you're authentic.
Of bringing the inner child into the oneness with you.
Well, yes, because as you said earlier about being creative, that means you're creative.
Yeah.
That means your determination is not stubborn. It's determined. You will find a way. That means that anything that comes your way, you believe in yourself. And if you have a couple of knockbacks, you stand up, you get back on the bike and start pedaling again.
Yeah.
That's because you believe in yourself and you accept his acceptance. Occasionally, you will fall off your bike. Occasionally, things won't go the way you hope they would go. But you know what? You get back onto the bike. I'll always remember Muhammad Ali, who I really thought was a great sportsman. And one of the things he said, they asked him, what makes a great champion? And he said, what makes a great champion is a person that can take a punch. And that's so true. Can you take a punch and come back even stronger?
Bounce back ability.
Exactly. And this is when you're in that flow.
Yeah.
You know, can you take a punch? Because life will give you punches.
Yeah.
I can't guarantee you. And if you want a life without punches, then you're in Disney World, because life will offer you punches. How can you ride the punches? How can you get back up again? How can you carry on even stronger after a punch? And those are the questions for you, for your life. No one else. No one else. Don't look for someone else. Look for you. Every answer that you want is within you. You know this. Why don't you believe in yourself and stop this nonsense of looking for outside validation and for other people to love you? Love yourself. Be honest with yourself. Have integrity with yourself. And that's the way forward, to live your life truthfully, honestly, and with integrity.
Great. Thank you, David. Well, I hope that's given you a really good overview of inner child work, inner child healing, what we're trying to do, and how do you know when it's done, or how do you know when you've reintegrated?
You're smiling now.
and you're experiencing those green light feelings. If you have any comments or questions on this topic, which I'm sure you will have, please post them below. I'll also put a link below as well, because a lot of people ask us how they can work with David with his Wu Wei Wisdom Talking Therapy sessions, where he does the golden thread process and does the inner child work with them. I'll put a web link below for that as well for anyone who's interested. And we look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye-bye.